Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly series of Shirim in the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom, and we're continuing where we were left off, where we find ourselves in the Chalal with the Rishimu taking shape within the Kalal, filling that apparently empty space with a presence of godliness that is concealed, but a full revelation of the potency of godliness. And it's going to be that Halal that the Kav or Ein Sof enters back into. And then that Kav or Ein Sof is then going to meet all of the Gilufin, all of the engravings that eventually become the shape of the unfolding of existence. What we just spent time over the last 2 weeks discussing from the Ramchal with regards to the Shem Havaya that is ultimately emergent from the Vav and the Hey. Because as we said, the Halal and the emergence of the Halal, that vacant space that is in truth the revelation of the Rishimu, the Or Ein Sof, is ultimately revelatory of the Hey, the lowest expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. Because the Tzimtzum is not a concealment, it's a revelation. And then the Kav or Ein Sof re-enters back into that Halal, and that's the Vav. And we said at the outset of creation, all we have is a Vav and a Hey. And so the entire discussion has been, how do we mashlim that name, Vav Hey, so that it could become a Yud K Vav K? And the Yud K, we said, is going to be the moichin that are drawn down from the true moichin, which don't necessarily enter into consideration. Now, the Zohar HaKadosh is continuing, after describing the beginning of the emergence of the Halal and the Kav or Ein Sof. We're still operating in a place prior to full manifestation, prior to the full manifestation of the glyph, of the engravings, of the pipeline, so to say, in which the Kav is going to unfold itself. The Zohar HaKadosh explains now, and this is what the Ramchal is going to be working with, is that at this preliminary stage of existence, the beginning and the end were not yet apparent. And this is what the Ramchal is going to bring us into, the beginning and the end. For the Ramchal, the beginning and the end, the Reishis and the Acharis, are ultimately the two sides of the full expression of unity. The beginning is the revelation of infinitude, and the end is going to be the return of all things back to infinitude. The middle period, which prior to the emergence of the ending, which reveals how it always already was that which took place at the beginning, the middle period, the Emsa, appears to be the polar opposite of that unity. It's going to be the unfolding of the processes, of the shifts, of the changes, of the ups and the downs, of the Hanagas Hamnishpat, where it appears that human beings are left to their own devices and the process of history unfolds. That middle period that extends the boundaries of the beginning and the end is only there as long as the revelation of the beginning has not yet been revealed at the end. But the yichud of the Reishis and the Acharis, the beginning and the end being unified, revealing that the middle period, which seems to have been a blockage between the revelation of the unity of the beginning, is going to be revealed as having always already been unfolding. And these two stages, the beginning and the end, are ultimately what represent the full framework of existence. That's what we're talking about when we speak at this lofty level of the priming of the eventual unfolding of existence. It must have a place for the beginning and the end. Everything is composed of the beginning and the end. This is what the Ramchal describes in Mesil Sisharim as well, that there's Hachana and there's Tachlis. There's the beginning, which is the preparatory stage that is leading to the unfolding principle of eventual unity, and there's the end, which is going to be the culmination of that unity being revealed. There's the beginning, which is history, and there's the end, which is the end of history, which is a revelation of the unity at the heart of all things. Very similar to the breakdown of our week is going to be the 6 days represent the beginning and the effort prior to the culmination, and Shabbos is going to be revealed as the end, as the culmination of all things. These two elements, the beginning and the end, reveal themselves in the masculine expressivity outwards, which is the light that is coming down from above so that it can engage in what it must engage in. That's the hachana, that's the beginning. And the end is malchus, the end is the nekeva, the end is that which can receive that light, hold it, process it, and reveal it to have been more than it actually is. And so the Ramchal is utilizing this point of the Zohar Kadosh as an entry point into some of the most fundamental principles that we're going to be seeing throughout the writings of the Adir BaMarom. The language of the Zohar HaKadosh is as follows: Sherusa v'siyuma lo have. At this point, at the initial immature stages of the unfolding of existence and the potential of existence in the Halal and the Kav, the Shirusa v'siyuma lo have, the beginning and the end were not yet found. V'havi maglif u'mashayar bei, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was engraving and measuring there. Uparis kaime chad parsa, and at that point he spread forth a particular partition. Uba galif v'shirei malchin, and it's as a result of that partition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu engraves and measures the kings, the Edomite kings, that that Olam HaTohu, which is the Malchus de Ein Sof, which is going to be the unfolding of history. Zot the Heilige Ramchal. Va'ata tzarech sheteda. We have to understand as follows. Kisod vavhei heim sod shirusa v'siyuma. V'gam yudhei sodem kach, aval mitzad vavkei keniska la'el ki ikar anyan sham. So the Ramchal is saying that this beginning and the end is reflected in the vav and the k, which represents the halal, and the kav that enters into the halal. The vav is the beginning, it's the masculine expressivity forwards. And the Hey is the feminine receptivity, which represents the end. Now, Yud K also represents this dynamism of the beginning and the end. But as we said, any Yud K-ness that we're talking about in the Halal is only by dint of its reflection within the Vav Hey, because that's the main place that we're speaking. Va'az nizkar b'Vav Hey. And therefore, once the Yud K, which is the Hamshach of the Moichin, down into the Vav K, then we can begin to call it a Yud K. So that's also going to be referred to as a beginning of the end. But the true form of Yud K, Eino ela al shem ha'asid lihiyos b'Vav. Yud K means that which is eventually going to be revealed within Vav. So that's why the main focus is on Vav. But these two elements, the Vav and the Hey, the Halal and the Kav, represent the beginning and the end. Ube'emes, and in truth, ki vav hehu b'chinas hakav v'harishimu atzmam k'nizka la'el. Like we said already, the vav represents the kav, and the hey represents the rishimu, the beginning and the end. V'hem mamish inyan shirusa v'siyuma kamosha efarish l'cha'ata. And the vav and the hey, the rishimu and the kav, the tzimtzum and the kav that enters back into it, is representative of this split between the beginning and the end that eventually allows for the unfolding of existence, and not only on the most general sense, but also in the most particular sense. ובחינה זו לא נקרא שנתגלה במקומו העצמי, עד שהגיע האור לבחינס זון בסוד ו"ה. Even though in the Yud Hey there's the emergent principle of the beginning and the end, because those are transcendental realms and they don't find expression in our reality, therefore the true expression of the beginning and the end is going to be by the Zer Anpin and Nukva, which is going to be the Vav and the Hey, which is going to be the truest reflection of the beginning of the end. So everything we're talking about now, all of these setups, all of these engravings and these preliminary stages of the unfolding and the refinement of the preparation for existence are only there in a primacy sense, that they're going to be fundamentally revealed later on down in the Hanhaga of Zun, in the Zer Anpin and the Nukva, the Zayin Tachtonos, which are the secret of the Vavhe. Ki ad shehaya meir besoid Yud, because as long as things were still operating in the secret of Yud, which is the Bechina of the Av and the Sag of Adam Kadmon, which is not something that's entering into consideration, lo haya elasod hadvekus shel ein sof k'nizkaleil. As long as things were still operating in their lofty realm of the Yud, which is the Havaya de Ab and the Havaya de Sag, which are the upper realms of Adam Kadmon, so then we're not talking about a beginning and an end, which is going to be receivable by creation. It's only shehu kamo hamulchin bezun. Those are like mulchin. Those represent the transcendental ideals that express themselves within physicality. She'enam shirish eloi tesefes. And we said that's not that which is most essential in existence. That is the additional elements to existence, the Yud and the K. But the Vav and the K, the beginning and the end, is always already there, and that's what's going to be revealed now. The Afarish L'cha'ata Inyan Sherusa V'siyuma. Says the Ramchal, I'm going to begin to explain to you right now the process of the beginning and the end. The Zer Anpin and the Nukva, the Halal and the Kav, all of that which is beginning to take shape after the Tzimtzum. Ki be'emes hu sod gadol va'amuk mod. In truth, an understanding of the Shirusa V'siyuma, which is the secret of Rosh Tevo Shas, which is the gematria of Shala Lo Yachsar, for a person to know everything from the beginning, from Brachos, from the Brachos L'Rosh Tzadik, down to Uksin, which is the difficulty of the Tzadik descending down into concealment. That's the Shirusa and the Siyuma. That's Rosh Tevo Shas. Ki be'emes hu sod gadol va'amuk mod. It's a very deep and powerful secret. That this beginning and the end, the split between the beginning and the end, the shirusa and the siyuma, the place that something begins and the place that something ends, this is the general shape of the Hanhaga in its most general form, as well as what takes place in each and every individual at every moment. Kamosha tishma ata b'siyata dishmaya, as we're going to explain right now. B'hinei sod hakol nira b'briyas ha'olam. If we want to see anything and we want to understand anything, we have to look at the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, because that was the establishment of the rules and the regulatory principles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to express throughout creation. She'heina ha'olam nivra b'vav yamim. The world was created in 6 days. V'achar kach yesh haShabbos shehu sod hamenucha. That after the 6 days of creation, not sod hamenucha, just menucha, right? There's the 6 days of creation, and then afterwards there's Shabbos, which is menucha. Ukamo ken yesh be'inyan ha'olam shehu mitkayim shisa alfei shanan va'achar kach yesh elef hashvi'i b'sod Shabbos. Just as the microcosm of the week has 6 days and a seventh day is Shabbos, so too the macrocosm of existence has the 6,000 millennia and the 7,000th millennia, which is an entry point into Bina, into Chad Charuv, into Olam Haba, which is the secret of Shabbos, Mein Olam Haba. So we see on a week level, there's the 6 days of the week and Shabbos, and on a historic level, there's the 6 millennia and the 7th millennia, which both represent the beginning and the end. The 6th represents the beginning, and the 7th represents the end. And so too, this is not only reflected in the temporal frequency of the week and the year, but rather it reflects itself within the life of the individual, which is going to be expressed in each and every moment of the individual, which is that there's effort and then there's calmness. The effort is the 6 days of the week, the 6,000 millennia, the shirusa, the work that we're engaged in, and Shabbos and menucha, and the resting is going to be the siyuma, the end. Because this is the fundamental way in which existence functions, it must be rooted in the ontology of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Because as the Ramchal is hinting to us, everything that we're going to see as unfolding within sensual, graspable, or conceivable, theoretical, intelligible reality, no matter how lofty the levels are all going to be rooted in the instantiation point in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in this world. There's nothing that takes shape down here that is not reflective of a process in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. And therefore, if we find down here that existence is split between the Shirusa and the Siyuma, between the 6 days of the week and the seventh day of Shabbos, the 6 millennia and the 7th millennia of Chad Charev, of Olam Haba, between the effort that the human being goes through and the calmness that emerges after that effort is complete, it has to be that it was situated this way and stipulated this way at the very outset of creation. The Sod HaKol Hu Sod Dun. And the fundamental way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself through this principle is the secret that everything in this world is created Zachar v'Nekeva, Hashpa'a and Makabel. Something that is expressive from above down below and something that is receptive from below down above. The beginning is the expression of the dukhra, of the masculine impulse that wants to share that which is above down below, expressed in chachma and chesed and all of those masculine tendencies to extend outwards by way of effort. And then the nekeva is the reception that doesn't do much of its own except for cultivate that which is being placed within it to allow it to be revealed as more than it actually was. And that's going to be the secret of the end. So we see that the stipulation of everything at the outset of creation is the dun, is dachar v'nekeva, mashpia and makabel. That becomes the bedrock, the frequency. That is the code at the core of all things, the zeros and the ones. V'sod hakol hu b'sod dun. Dachar v'nukva, shahazachar hu sod harosh, v'hanekeva hu sod hasof. That the zachar, which is expressivity, which is the desire to express outwards, is the beginning of the effort, those 6 days of the week, those 6,000 millennia. And the nekeva, which is the end, which is the receptivity, which is the calmness, which is the modesty, is that which rests at the end. The whole davar hukach, besoid rosh v'sof, everything from the most micro to the most macro expresses itself across this dual expression of the masculine and the feminine, the beginning and the end. And the secret of the Rosh and the Sof, as the pasuk says, Magid Mereshus Acharis, he who tells from the beginning to the end. That's the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to reveal that the beginning and the end are unified together is one fell swoop. And this is the secret of the divine governance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to express throughout the entirety of existence, both ontology and history as well, is the beginning, which is the expressivity of the Zachar, which is the Rashis, down to the end, which is the receptivity of the Nekeva. Mereshis Hashana ad Achris Hashana, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, from the desire to express to the desire to hold that expression. V'ha'inyan. And the matter is as follows. Because ultimately, these two stages of the beginning and the end are actually two differentiated elements of a singular principle, which is Soif Masav Machshavat Chila, that everything that is going to be revealed at the end, and the secret of the Nekeva, and the secret of the Gemar HaMaisa, and the secret of the Menucha Muchletas that's going to arrive, is rooted fundamentally in the original thought thought which precedes all of the effort, which means to say all of the effort that appears to be so polar opposite to the menucha has to be seen as the preparatory stage that enables us to get to the menucha. And in the moment of menucha, when we reach the culmination, we come to realize that all of the processing was ultimately there to bring us to this very moment itself. The beginning of thought is the masculine tendency, whose magmaso el hanakeva shu hasof, whose entire purpose and entire desire is to reach the end, is to reach the teleological end, which is the nekeva. V'nimtza, and it turns out shekol zman shahazachar sholet huzman hapuula, kol zman that we operate in the 6,000 millennia that the world operate, the 6 days of the week, the zman of tircha, the zman of effort, mishatarach be'erev Shabbos yochel b'Shabbos, the entire guiding principle of Metzias is going to be pu'ula, effort. But kishihigiu hadvarim el hanakeva, as hakol b'sod hamenucha. But the closer and closer we come to the end, the closer and closer we come to that secret of Malchus, which is going to be the end, which is going to be Shabbos, which is going to be Menucha, which is going to be the Elef Hashvi'i, we come into a place of Menucha, which is why so many tzaddikim point out that the closer and closer we get to Geula, the more and more refined the technological advancement is, that it's reducing the necessity of the Yegias Hayadayim, and it's revealing the undoing of the curse of B'zeyas HaPecha Tochel Lechem. We can only daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we handle this process properly. But ultimately, the undoing of effort is a reflection of the incoming redemptive principle of the Nekeva taking on its true shape as the place of Menucha Muchletas, Menuchas Emesh Ha'ater Otzeba. V'nishar Hadavar B'Kviyas Shalem. What does Menucha mean? Menucha means that you no longer have to actively engage it for it to be there, but rather it is just there, it abides. It is no longer something that needs effort to ensure that it continues, but it has a self-continuity in it because it is now expressing the natural flow of things. And this is the way that the entire Welt runs, the beginning and the end, the masculine and the feminine, effort and calmness. Every moment is split between these two elements. Because the 6,000 millennia of existence are the secret of that masculine tendency of doing. Each and every one has its own mark. Each and every one has its own preference as to how to express itself. This is the time of action and this is the time of preparation. In the end, we come to the 7th millennia, the 7th day, in the place of the Nekeva, which is the place of Shabbos Menucha, which is the purpose of existence. And this is also the secret of life and death within the individual, that the beginning is life and the end is a misa. It's not actual death, but it's a calmness. It's a menucha muchletes. The same way that Shabbos is a death of the week, so too menucha is a death of effort. Because all of the time and history of existence is in the secret of that masculine process of preparation. And the end of history is ultimately going to be about that rising feminine principle, the secret of Shabbos Menucha, Sha'olim Lenoyach El Sharasham, which is an ascent back up to its principle of calmness, where everything is going to be revealed to be the exact way that it needs to be. For today, we're going to end there. And the secret of the shirusa and the siyuma, how all of effort is ultimately leading towards that siyum, which is the purpose of all things, which is calmness. And we're going to see how all of the effort is in and of itself that which is bringing us closer and closer to calmness. Next week, we're going to dive deep into the Ramchal's understanding of menucha, which is the he'eder of action, no longer needing to engage, but rather trusting the engagement and the preparation that we prepared ourselves with, to trust the perpetual flow of that which needs to be taking shape, Be'ezras Hashem.